How did this woman go from literally being at this man's throat
Sorry. Thought you were better on your feet.
to feeling really bad for the guy when someone close to him died? That's right, I'm hinting at the dynamic duo of Negan and Maggie. And no, I'm not talking about these two from the original Walking Dead series. Instead, I'm talking about the Walking Dead Dead City spinoff. This show is as great as the original series, so without further ado, let's get right into it. First things first, though, you should know that the Walking Dead Dead City is set in a post-apocalyptic world filled with zombies, whom we call walkers. The story revolves around Negan and Maggie. In the original Walking Dead series, Negan was introduced as a villain. He was known for his signature Negan whistle and his iconic baseball bat, which he used as a weapon. Negan used to call his bat Lucille, after his late wife who died of cancer before the virus outbreak. In The Walking Dead, Negan led an enemy gang called the Saviors, who called their settlement the Sanctuary. Upon his introduction, Negan killed Maggie's poor husband, Glenn, by bashing his face in with Lucille. Why? It's simple. They all were on opposite sides. At the time, Maggie was pregnant with Glenn's child, who we now know as Herschel. Anywho, as the original series went on, Negan changed a lot and felt guilty for killing Glenn. His gang completely fell apart, and years later, Negan found another woman to love, Annie. Eventually, Negan married Annie, and they had a son, whom they later named Joshua. Despite Negan having come a long way, Maggie just can't help but hate the guy. Okay, now that we know that, let's move on to the show. The first episode of Season 1 opens up with Maggie scoping out Manhattan through a big monocular. It seems like the city is all kinds of messed up. The buildings are abandoned, and hundreds of flesh-eating walkers are walking the streets as if they're off to a Linkin Park concert. After that, Maggie pulls out a map that is marked with a mysterious dot. As Maggie is looking at the map, a bunch of walkers creep up behind her. Maggie tries to hide, but a filthy-ass walker attacks her. Maggie fights back and straight up bashes its skull in with the darn monocular. That is clearly against the monocular's return policy. After killing the walker, Maggie decides to move ahead, possibly towards the location marked on the map. Moving on, Maggie stops at the Easy Stay Motor Inn, which is surprisingly still open in the middle of this mess. Maggie sits down to get a drink because she really needs one and talks to the humble bartender. Maggie lies to the bartender that her cabin got overrun by walkers. The bartender mentions that they've got a guy who's amazing at killing walkers. Obviously, Maggie is really interested in the guy. Or at least, she pretends to be. However, before she can get more details, a woman named Jonas, the owner of this hotel, interrupts, telling the bartender that the generator needs a refill. Right away, Maggie asks the bartender for the restroom. However, that's just an excuse for Maggie to sneak into one of the motel's rooms. In this motel room, Maggie realizes a guy is showering and finds a knife on the table. Maggie picks up the knife, and for some reason, she decides to attack the guy in the shower. Oh gosh, take it easy, Maggie! But before she can do that, a couple of guys grab her from behind and take her to Jonas. Obviously, Jonas is pissed at Maggie for sneaking inside a room. Not only that, but Jonas also accuses Maggie of being a spy for someone named Vasquez. Right then, Jonas pulls a knife out to slice off Maggie's nose. Oh, yikes! However, it turns out that Maggie's got a hidden blade in her boot like a frickin' assassin. Using that knife, Maggie beats the crap out of Jonas and her goons. As Maggie is being a badass, Negan... That's right, frickin' Negan walks in to see what the hell is going on. Negan sees Maggie and gets the hell out of there. What's surprising is that Maggie also sees a mute little girl named Ginny following Negan. Well, that's interesting. Also, it's pretty clear that the guy inside the shower was actually Negan. Now, Maggie gets inside her car to follow Negan and Ginny, but she accidentally drops her map book. Regardless, she eventually catches up to the duo and holds a knife to Negan's throat. I know you might be thinking that Maggie wants to kill Negan, but that ain't it, as later Maggie reveals that her son Herschel was taken hostage by a guy called the Croat, who also raided Maggie's camp for grain. Maggie asks Negan about his wife Annie and their son Joshua. However, Negan doesn't answer the question. Oh no, did something bad happen? Anywho, Maggie tells Negan that she tracked this Croat jerk all the way to Manhattan. Maggie even reveals that the Croat did the Negan whistle right before he took Herschel. So Maggie thinks that Negan knows this Croat guy. Well, that he does, and right then, Negan reveals that the Croat was once a part of his crew, and he was a pure psychopath. Yeah, that ain't surprising. Obviously, Maggie wants Negan to help track down the Croat, and Negan agrees if Maggie takes Ginny to her hilltop camp. The hilltop has schools and all sorts of facilities, and apparently Negan wants Ginny to have a future there. Negan, on the other hand, is a wanted man by the Marshals, who are basically the law enforcement officers of New Babylon, the new capital city. In this lawless world, New Babylon wants to enforce orders, but they aren't exactly the good guys. Anywho, since Marshals are after him, Negan isn't really sure what's going to happen to him. After traveling for a while, Maggie and Negan stop in the middle of nowhere where Maggie fires a flare to call her hilltop people. Maggie also reveals that the hilltop camp had to relocate after Negan burned down the original one in the Walking Dead series. Yeah, bro did a lot of bad stuff back then. At the same time, Negan tells Maggie that Ginny saw her father turn into a walker and the poor girl went mute due to trauma. Oh man, that's awful. The good thing is that Negan took Ginny under his wing after he found her at a farm. A little while later, a hilltop member named Nina shows up to take Ginny to the camp. Meanwhile, back at the Easy Stay Motor Inn, we meet Pearlie Armstrong, a marshal. Turns out Pearlie is hunting down Negan for murdering a magistrate of New Babylon. Not only that, but Pearlie also reveals that, as per the law, Negan must be cut down in half as the punishment. Talk about being sadistic. Pearlie now questions Jonas about Negan, and the woman says she doesn't know what Pearlie's talking about. Pearlie knows Jonas is lying, so she shoves her into a fence lined with walkers for harboring a fugitive. At the same time, one of the guys tells Pearlie about Maggie's truck and that she was following Negan. That escalated fast. So now Pearlie has a lead on Negan and Maggie. Ah, come on. Elsewhere, Negan leaves for Manhattan with Maggie after saying goodbye to Ginny. Meanwhile, jerkwad Pearlie finds Maggie's dropped map book and realizes that it's missing a page. A map of Manhattan. Dude, he's onto them now. Later that night, Maggie and Negan spot smoke rising from Manhattan while sitting by a lake, which apparently is the only way to Manhattan since all the bridges are gone. Fortunately, a boat is just resting there, so Maggie and Negan decide to enter Manhattan using the boat. But right then, Pearlie shows up on the scene with his junior marshals. Oh, damn! However, before Pearlie can spot Negan and Maggie, the duo grabs the junior marshal Jono and uses him as a human shield to escape. That's a bold move. On the boat, Maggie and Negan realize that Jono is a rookie and is totally harmless. Negan still wants to toss Jono overboard, but Maggie thinks the boy can be their insurance against Pearlie. After reaching Manhattan, Negan and Maggie, still holding Jono hostage, realize that Manhattan is completely dark and really scary. Deep into the city, Maggie and Negan try to follow the massive smoke in the sky. Right away, Jono tries to make a run for it, but of course Negan stops him. Then things turn wild as walkers literally start falling from the sky. Okay, I'm sorry, what? It's possible that these walkers are falling from the tops of buildings after hearing Maggie and Negan. So, as they dodge the frickin' walker rainstorm, a mysterious woman watches Maggie's group from a rooftop. Maggie and the group keep moving, and that's when they notice the vehicle using creepy music to lure a massive herd towards them. Maggie, Negan, and Jono try to hide behind a huge pile of trash, but they get swarmed by cockroaches. Before things can get any worse, someone starts shooting at the walkers, which allows Maggie and the group to enter a cleaner's store. Around the same time, we learn that the guys who shot at the walkers were Pearlie and the other junior marshal, Grits. Unfortunately for Negan, Pearlie and Grits are also barricade themselves in the same damn store. Maggie and Negan quickly hide while Pearlie starts speaking to Maggie. Basically, Pearlie tries to humanize himself so that Maggie will come out on her own. Pearlie even says that he has a wife and 3 daughters. The dude also describes New Babylon as a cozy small-town utopia. Dude is really sweet-talking after feeding a human being to walkers. During all this chaos, a walker with a frickin' rat in its mouth attacks Jono. Negan saves him, but Pearlie panics and accidentally shoots Jono dead himself. Dude, poor Jono didn't deserve this. At the same time, the herd storms in and eats Grits as well. Meanwhile, Maggie and Pearlie fight over his gun, and Maggie finally admits that she just needs Negan's help to save her son. After hearing this, Pearlie sort of loses his focus, so Maggie uses the chance to knock him out cold. At this point, Maggie almost kills Pearlie, but at the last moment, she decides not to be a killer when it's not needed. Good choice, Maggie. After this, Maggie and Negan escape into a completely dark back room, where they run into Esther. Yeah, she's the same creepy woman who's been looking at Maggie and Negan from the rooftop. Now we cut to Herschel, who's about to get tortured by the Croat. This old man asks Herschel if the boy knows about the man who killed his father. Yeah, he's talking about none other than Negan. However, Herschel asks the Croat to buzz off. Before the old sicko can torture poor Herschel with a blade, the Croat learns from one of his goons that someone has escaped. Next, we see that this someone is actually the Croat's prisoner, who's trying to escape the building through a zipline. Next thing you know, the Croat cuts the zipline while the poor guy is midway through. So he just falls to his death. Dude, this old geezer's a sadistic bastard. The second episode kicks off with Maggie and Negan trapped in that room. Obviously, the walkers are trying to break in, and to make things worse, Esther has already stolen all their stuff. Regardless, the duo escapes through a hole in the ceiling and chases Esther up an elevator shaft. Once Maggie and Negan reach the rooftop, they see Esther using a zipline to get to another building. There's a zipline on every building, apparently. Surprisingly, Esther sends the zipline's hook back for Maggie and Negan. I guess she's not all that bad. Naturally, Maggie and Negan use the zipline, but as Maggie is midway, the same creepy music from earlier starts playing. Obviously, Maggie gets distracted, but eventually she manages to zipline to the other side without falling off. Next, we cut to the hilltop base, which is also called Bricks, by the way. There, Nina drops off Ginny, who walks around for a bit before meeting the camp's teacher, Mr. Aizawa. Ginny is all kinds of scared, and Aizawa introduces her to the rest of the students at the camp to make her comfortable. Shockingly, the other students don't exactly give Ginny a welcoming vibe. Aw, man. Back to Maggie and Negan, the duo asks Esther to lead them to the smoke. However, Esther says something in Hebrew, which Negan translates as, "Hell friggin' no." Okay. At this point, Maggie and Negan realize that they have no choice but to follow Esther wherever the hell she's going. Now we return to Pearlie, who wakes up in the same store and sees a zombified Grits. At that moment, Pearlie looks at an envelope with Joel Armstrong's address. And yeah, Joel is actually Pearlie's brother. Dude is clearly haunted by something. Back to Maggie and Negan, Esther leads them inside a building, where they meet Amaya and Tommaso. These new folks greet Maggie and Negan by pointing modified nail guns at their faces. Well, that's a rather warm welcome. Turns out Amaya and Tommaso are pissed that Esther keeps bringing new guys to their base. Of course, Maggie and Negan realize that Esther and her guys aren't working with the Croat. So Maggie cooks a fake-ass story about heading to Canada. However, Amaya doesn't buy Maggie's story one bit, so Tommaso disarms Maggie and Negan, and a guy named Luther searches their bags. Finally, Esther's group locks Maggie and Negan in a bathroom. This is turning out to be a great vacation. Meanwhile, at Bricks, Ginny is having a rather tough time adjusting, and the poor girl just misses Negan too much. Nina tries to comfort the poor girl, but it just doesn't seem to work. Oh gosh, that's just so sad. Then we see a flashback of Maggie and Herschel back at Bricks. Maggie wants Herschel to train seriously because his life may depend on it someday. However, Herschel is more interested in skipping training and spending his time drawing. Back in the present, Negan and Maggie are still locked in the bathroom. That's when Negan decides to spill some beans on the Croat. Turns out this guy showed up at Negan's door at the start of the outbreak. He was traumatized, so Negan took him in and basically saved his life. After some time, the Croat began to consider Negan his brother. Negan also reveals that the Croat could read people, so Negan used that skill to interrogate people. Then one day, Negan ordered him to release a prisoner. However, the Croat, being the sick bastard he is, killed the prisoner. Of course, the prisoner was a spy, but still, the Croat defied Negan's orders. After that mess, Negan realized that the Croat was too risky to keep around, so he tried to shoot the old geezer, but only blew his ear off. The Croat then managed to escape, and now that earless sicko has Maggie's child. Oh my goodness. He's basically a wounded animal. Now we cut to Pearlie, who breaks into Joel Armstrong's apartment. Sadly, though, Pearlie finds Joel dead, who shockingly shot himself after running out of supplies. Pearlie is heartbroken, clearly, so he covers Joel with a sheet and grabs his gun. Then he escapes the apartment through a window, but gets caught in a net. This man cannot catch a break. Cut to Maggie and Negan. The duo hears everyone outside of the bathroom. Then Tommaso storms in and blames them for leading the Croat's goons to their hideout. By the way, the Croat's men go by the name Barazzi, and they wear spiked helmets because why not? Anyway, after putting in some effort, Negan convinces Tommaso that he's harmless and is not with Barazzi. Maggie and Negan get their weapons back as the Barazzi close in. Then Maggie and Negan and everyone else start fighting the Barazzi goons, and they kill a heck of a lot of people. After that, Maggie's group heads to the roof, trying to escape via a zipline, but right then a Barazzi grabs Esther and stabs her to death right in front of everyone.
Hey. Hey.
Dude, they really just killed Esther? Just like that? Negan is pissed, as he should be, and so he slams the guy's head into a beam. Tommaso, on the other hand, stabs Esther in the head so she doesn't zombify. My goodness, that's heartbreaking. Now Negan sends everyone else across the zip lines while he deals with the douchebag who killed Esther. Negan smashes the Barazzi guy's head against the windows as the rest of the Barazzi guys watch everything from down below. Surprisingly, Negan goes full Negan mode while killing the Barazzi dude. He brutally disembowels the guy before throwing the dude's body down onto the other Barazzi below as a warning. Honestly, if Negan says Walter White's "I am the danger" line right now, I'd be okay with that.
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger.
Maggie watches Negan doing that show from behind, and even she is terrified. Meanwhile, at the Bricks, Ginny has had enough of this act civilized nonsense, so she steals a motorbike. Then, in the middle of the night, she just leaves. Back to Negan and Maddie. At this point, Maggie finally tells Amaya and Tommaso the truth. Maggie admits that she's going after the Croat to get her son back, and naturally Amaya and Tommaso agree to help. Finally, we cut to Pearlie, who's about to become Walker's food while stuck in the net. But that's when the Croat himself arrives and headbutts the Walkers, killing them with the spikes on his helmet. Oh, so that's why they've got spikes on their helmets. After that, the Croat orders his men to take Pearlie to their base. The third episode kicks off with a flashback. We see Ginny, who's all alone in the middle of the woods. Then a walker tries to attack the poor girl, but fortunately Negan swoops in and puts the darn thing down. Once that's done, Negan gets pissed at Ginny for running off like that, just because she lost her dinosaur toy. Really? Just for a toy? However, Negan embraces his softy side and agrees to help her find the toy. Back in the present, Ginny reaches the Hudson River, where she finds a big yellow refrigerator. After that, she uses the cheap refrigerator as a boat and paddles towards Manhattan. Meanwhile, Maggie and Negan learn that the Croat offered protection to people stuck in Manhattan. The choice was simple: join or die. And since Amaya's gang told the Croat to buzz off, the old geezer has been hunting them like crazy. While all of this goes on, Ginny has finally reached the godforsaken city of Manhattan. Oh boy, that's not good. Back to the group, Tommaso explains that to get the Croat, they need to go through Madison Square Garden. There's one teeny tiny problem though. That place is surrounded by a walker mega herd. Apparently the Croat has been stockpiling the walkers in Madison Square Garden with the music truck trick from earlier. Sewers are a no-go too, sadly. The army packed them with walker corpses and sealed them shut. Fortunately, though, Tommaso once managed to escape the Croat's base, so he knows a way. Of course, it takes some convincing, but ultimately, Tommaso agrees to show Maggie and Negan the way to the Croat. Meanwhile, we see the Croat bringing in a captured Pearlie to his base. There, Pearlie sees that the Croat has been putting a dead body inside some kind of fluid. Dude, what is this? Some kind of sick science experiment? Regardless, the Croat then cuffs Pearlie in his office. From there, the marshal looks at a fighting ring of some kind. Of course, the Croat is into MMA. Back to Maggie and Negan, Tommaso reveals that the Croat used to offer him food and medicine for info on his friends. Well, Tommaso didn't give the old jerk anything. In fact, Tommaso managed to escape the Croat's base through the old subway system. After listening to all this, Maggie comes up with a plan. Apparently, she wants to use Negan as bait to lure the Croat out and then kill the old scumbag. Obviously, everybody agrees it's a good enough plan, but then Luther straight up tells Maggie her son's probably already dead. Damn it, Luther, read the room! Obviously, Maggie gets pissed off and storms out. Back with Pearlie, the Croat welcomes him with a fancy candlelit dinner. The old man reveals to a handcuffed Pearlie that he's decomposing bodies in the sewers to create methane. That's how he's powering this entire place. Interestingly, the Croat was a scientist, so he knew how to use the decomposition of dead bodies to produce fuel. While talking, the Croat discovers his meat is rotten and completely snaps. The dude gets so pissed that he forces the guy who served him the meat to eat the key to Pearlie's handcuffs. After that, the Croat kills the poor guy, and I thought Negan had anger issues. Back to Maggie, Negan tries to comfort the poor woman to give her some hope for Herschel. At this point, Negan reveals that his wife Annie was assaulted by some sick men, so Negan killed all of them, and after that he put Annie and their son Joshua on a wagon to Missouri while he stayed behind. Sadly, Negan hasn't seen his wife and child ever since. Dude, I really hope those two are alive. Meanwhile, Ginny is roaming around Manhattan when she drops her dinosaur toy. To make things worse, a filthy walker reaches for the toy as Ginny stays hidden. Then, out of nowhere, a woman named Ritza kills the walker. Ritza then picks up the toy herself and moves ahead. Ritza doesn't stop Ginny, but of course, Ginny quietly starts following the strange woman. Back at the Croat's base, everyone celebrates the death of the guy butchered by Negan earlier. Why a celebration? It's simple, actually. In this sickening world of the Croat, more dead bodies means more fuel. So obviously they celebrate death. Not only that, but some of these jerks even inhale the methane because the darn thing also works as some kind of drug. The Croat even forces Pearlie to take a hit and then handcuffs him inside the fighting ring. After that, the old sicko also pushes a walker. Yeah, it's the same guy the Croat killed, to fight Pearlie. Sure, the odds are against Pearlie since, he's handcuffed. Surprisingly, though, Pearlie uses the same darn handcuffs to decapitate the walker. After that, Pearlie uses a broken glass to cut open the walker's stomach and retrieve the handcuff key. Ooh, that's quick thinking. It doesn't take long for Pearlie to free himself and kill 2 more walkers. Pearlie is really going through the Gladiator Zombie Edition. Back to Maggie, she asks Tommaso about how scary Manhattan is. And that's when Ritza walks in. Yeah, it turns out she's a part of Amaya's group. Anywho, Ritza reveals everything that she has gathered from the street, and Maggie sees the dinosaur toy. Maggie instantly recognizes the toy and takes it from Ritza without even revealing Ginny's identity. Yeah, Maggie knows that Ginny is in town. Around the same time, the Croat congratulates Pearlie for putting on quite a show inside the ring. The Croat also reveals that early in the outbreak, his own family was eaten by another group. Oh my goodness, that's awful. At this moment, Pearlie also reveals that he's in town to hunt down Negan. Great, the old sicko now knows that Negan is here. Elsewhere, Luther unfortunately finds Negan's wanted poster and asks Negan to leave with Maggie. Come on, big dude, don't be like that. Of course, Negan doesn't want to leave, so he starts to fight the big fella. During the fight, Luther falls down and accidentally stabs the back of his own head on a pipe. Oh my hell! Luther still ain't dead, but Negan finishes the job by shoving the big guy's head down the rest of the way. Now we cut back to the flashback when Negan finally found Ginny's dinosaur toy. Negan then taught Ginny the whistle his late wife Lucille used. He wanted Ginny to use that same whistle to call for him when she's in trouble. Now we are back to the present and see that Maggie is about to burn the dinosaur toy. Now why would she go and do that? It's possibly because Maggie doesn't want Negan to know that Ginny is here, who, according to her, might already be dead. And if Negan learns that, he might abandon the mission to find Ginny. However, Maggie sort of hesitates and hasn't burned down the toy yet. Yeah, don't burn that dino, Maggie. Also, what Maggie doesn't know is that Ginny is watching her from the shadows. The 4th episode begins with a flashback in which we see Negan back at the Sanctuary, his base from when he led a gang of goons. Not only that, but we also see Lucille, Negan's iconic baseball bat. The guy actually killed Maggie's husband Glenn with this weapon. Yeah, that memory still haunts me. Moving on, Negan learns from his minion Simon that the Croat has killed the spy, the one Negan asked to be released. Simon and Negan meet up with the Croat, who very proudly reveals that the spy was sent by someone called the King. At this point, we see that the spy was actually just a kid. Still, the sicko Croat tortured and killed the poor girl. Ah, jeez! Of course, both Negan and Simon are horrified and pissed at the nutjob for doing this to a kid, a line they never cross. Back in the present, Negan is with Maggie and the rest of the gang, who are prepared to attack the Croat. Around this time, Amaya reveals that Luther has gone missing, but of course, Negan doesn't reveal anything. Meanwhile, Maggie doesn't tell Negan about the dinosaur toy either, so I guess everyone's hiding something. Regardless, Amaya and Tommaso think Luther must have left because he's always hated this plan, so they don't think about him much. The group now heads to the subway system to reach the Croat's base. And guess what? Sneaky Ginny has been secretly following the group. Oh man, I don't like where this is going. After reaching the base, Maggie and Negan see a dead kid tied to a chair. And Maggie thinks the kid is Herschel. Obviously, Maggie is shaken, but Negan examines the walker and confirms that it's not Maggie's son.
It's not him.
Dude, my heart stopped for a second there. At this point, we learn that as part of the plan, Maggie will steal a car while Negan lures the Croat down to the garage. Once they get the old geezer alone, the rest of the gang will take out the Barrazi goons back at the base. I have a feeling this plan will absolutely not go this smoothly. At the same time, Maggie finally decides to tell Negan about finding Ginny's toy, but before Maggie says anything, she spots Luther's beeswax in Negan's bag. So yeah, she puts two and two together about what actually happened to Luther and is really pissed. Negan wants to explain, and he does have a pretty good explanation, but Maggie refuses to listen and moves ahead. Meanwhile, the Croat is at his control center with a nervous young Barrazi operator. Right then, the Croat hears Negan's signature whistle echoing through the halls. Weirdly enough, the Croat lights up like a dang kid on Christmas and runs off to find Negan. On the other hand, the Barrazi operator starts a 5-minute countdown on a disc player. Something's about to go horribly wrong. Meanwhile, in the garage, Maggie spots Ginny while hotwiring a cab, but the kid starts running away. Naturally, Maggie starts chasing after Ginny because this is no darn place for a kid. Around the same time, Amaya's group reaches the main arena of the Croat's base, but there's no one there. Just as Maggie catches up to Ginny at the arena, Amaya tells Maggie that this was a frickin' trap. Of course it is. During all of this, Negan is also hiding in the garage while the Croat is looking for him. Finally, the disc timer hits 0 and the arena's doors blow wide open, bringing the mega herd of walkers.
There's too many! Follow me!
Yeah, it looks like you guys have some uninvited and hungry guests. Naturally, the Barrazi goons escape the arena in their vehicles, but Maggie's group is completely surrounded by the walkers. Negan also realizes that the plan is a bust, so he hides out in a room full of body tanks. Right now, Maggie's group is near the fighting ring, where they fight off the countless walkers. During the struggle, though, a bunch of walkers drag poor Tommaso right in front of everyone. No, not Tommaso! I liked that guy. Meanwhile, the Croat asks a couple of his men to look for Negan. He's just too darn excited for his reunion. Back to Maggie's group, during the bloodbath, Maggie spots a mostly clear exit that they can use. But right then, she also spots Ginny trapped in the ring, so she chooses to abandon her escape route to save the kid instead. Oh, thank goodness. I was scared for a second there. Eventually, Maggie barricades herself in the ring with Ginny, Amaya, and Ritza. Now, Maggie's group keeps on killing the walkers through the ring cage, but of course, this isn't an easy fight, so poor Ritza becomes walker food. In fact, Amaya almost meets the same fate, but then Tommaso reappears like a total badass. That's right, this dude somehow survived. Moving on, the exit Maggie saw is no longer clear, so Tommaso leads everyone into the tunnels instead. But deep in the tunnels, the group gets cornered in a dead-end room with walkers banging on the door. Ah, come on. Elsewhere, the Croat finally stops Negan on a catwalk, and shockingly, the old geezer says he doesn't want revenge. In fact, the Croat seems pretty happy seeing Negan and even asks about Lucille. Not Negan's ex-wife, but the Bat. Regardless, the old idiot thinks that Negan is after Pearlie, but Negan clarifies that he just wants Herschel back. Right then, the Croat orders his men to throw Pearlie off the catwalk. The Croat knows that Pearlie wants to capture Negan, so killing the Marshal is the old geezer's gesture of goodwill. Surprisingly, though, Pearlie grabs onto Negan's catwalk, and, well, instead of letting the man fall, Negan pulls him up. The old Negan would have let him fall for real, though. The Croat shoots Pearlie in the leg to stop him, but Negan helps the Marshal, and the two start running together. At this point, the Croat is really shocked that Negan just saved his enemy. Yeah, but Negan will kill you without hesitation for sure. Back in the tunnels, Maggie's group realizes that they have no darn choice but to escape through the sewers. Amaya is not sure because, the sewers are full of the dead and toxic air. But hey, they don't exactly have other options, so she agrees. Meanwhile, Negan and Pearlie arrive in an abandoned shoe store, and the second they're safe, Pearlie points his gun at Negan. Really, dude? The man just saved your life. During all of this, Maggie's group finally enters the sewers, and goodness knows what horror they'll have to face in there. Episode 5 takes us to the corpse-filled sewers, where Maggie realizes that Negan is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Amaya asks about Ginny, and Maggie says that the kid is with her. Ginny, on the other side, notices her dinosaur toy in Maggie's bag. Back to Negan, Pearly is still pointing his gun at the dude while they're looking for a way off Manhattan. Negan tells Pearly that they can't really escape with the Croat hunting them. Negan also asks Pearly to cool down with the gun pointing since he just saved his ass. However, Pearly is hellbent on punishing Negan for killing the magistrate and 4 other men. That's when Negan drops a truth bomb and reveals that he killed those jerks because they assaulted his wife. In that case, those scumbags should be cut in half. Lengthwise. Obviously, Pearly didn't know any of this and is shocked, but still, he isn't ready to trust Negan just yet. Dude, are you freaking serious right now? Back in the sewers, the group is having a tough time breathing through the methane. And to make things even more difficult, Ginny tries escaping through a manhole to go after Negan. Obviously, Maggie stops the kid and gets really pissed off. She even tells Ginny that Negan isn't exactly a saint, as she thinks he is. Meanwhile, Pearly wants to take Negan towards the dock, hoping they find something to float away from the city. However, it doesn't take long for a horde of walkers to corner them, so the duo doesn't waste any time and enters a building through a window. Back in the sewers, Tommaso very conveniently produces 2 oxygen tanks for the group. However, Maggie is somewhat suspicious and refuses to use one. What the hell is going on here? At the same time, Amaya wonders how in the hell the Barazzi knew that they were coming. Right then, Tommaso tries to pin the entire thing on Luther, saying the big fella must have tipped off the enemy. Of course, Luther can't defend himself because he's dead. But Maggie already knows that. In that very moment, Maggie instantly realizes that the person who tipped off the Croat is none other than Tommaso. What the hell? Naturally, Maggie calls out Tommaso, who actually revealed their base's location to save his ass when he was captured. Dude, you really shouldn't have. Naturally, Amaya is pissed, like really pissed. So she moves ahead with Ginny. Maggie and Tommaso also follow, but yeah, Tommaso now absolutely hates Maggie. Back with Negan and Pearly, the duo sees a creepy-ass walker. Right then, Negan shoves the walker onto Pearly to buy himself an exit. But guess what? Pearly not only kills the walker, but also opens up a path for Negan with his nail gun. This is an interesting turn of events, of course. Negan can easily walk away now, but Pearly collapses from his leg injury. Even after all of this, and knowing very well that Pearly won't stop hunting him, the good old Negan refuses to leave Pearly behind. Now we cut to the sewers, where Maggie tells Amaya she can head to Bricks for safety, and that Ginny already knows the way. But midway through the conversation, Maggie almost collapses from exposure to methane. Even then, she refuses to use Tommaso's oxygen tanks. Just when all this goes on, one of the corpses in the sewers starts twitching. My goodness! This is not the time to faint, Maggie! Now Tommaso walks to Maggie and tells her that the Croat captured him when he was trying to escape, so he traded his camp's location to save himself and get back to Amaya. In exchange, the Croat promised to give Tommaso a boat and lead them to a settlement made up of bricks. Holy crap! Instantly, Maggie realizes the Croat was talking about the bricks settlement itself. Before Maggie can digest this info, a bunch of lazy walkers attack Amaya, Ginny, and Tommaso. Maggie is able to save Ginny, and thank goodness for that, but sadly Amaya and Tommaso die right on the spot. That's an awful ending for these guys. Elsewhere, we see the Croat arriving at some kind of theater where he passes by a rowdy gang, and finally the Croat meets with a woman called the Doma, who's just too well dressed for a post-apocalyptic town. The Croat tells the Doma everything that's happened. The old geezer tells the woman about Pearly, implying that New Babylon's marshals are now involved. At this point, we learn that this Doma lady somehow knows Negan, and she wants him found, no matter what. Before leaving, the Croat bows down before the Doma and kisses her hand like she's the bloody queen. But yeah, it's clear that the Doma is running things in this town and that the Croat is just another minion. Next, we see Negan find a first aid kit for Pearly, who's confused about why Negan has been helping him. Negan clarifies that he's helping the dude because he doesn't want to be blamed for the death of a marshal. Makes sense. At that moment, Pearly finally reveals that his brother Joel was a drug junkie before the outbreak. One night, Joel even attacked his mother, so Pearly cut him off completely. That is why Joel was left to survive all alone after the outbreak. But now Pearly wonders if Joel really deserved to die alone. In fact, Pearly starts to question if New Babylon's laws really work well in this messed up world. No, they really don't. Back in the sewers, Maggie and Ginny continue walking past goodness knows how many corpses. And after a while, Maggie's foot gets stuck in one of the bodies, and at the same time, a walker starts moving towards them. Oh goodness, talk about timing. Maggie is scared as hell, and she asks Ginny to run away, and the kid does just that. Now the walker gets really close to Maggie, who realizes it's not just one walker. It's 4 merged into one. Yeah, that ugly thing deserves to be in hell. Fortunately, though, Maggie manages to pop all 4 walker heads, killing the thing right away without getting bitten. Now, Maggie starts to run after Ginny, who for some reason has written liar on the wall using walker blood. Why though? In that moment, we see a flashback of Ginny when she was at Bricks. Before escaping the settlement, Ginny checked the grain and realized it was full. Wait, so the Croat never really stole the grains at Maggie's settlement? After that, we see another flashback of when the Croat captured Herschel. Turns out the Croat took Herschel hostage and promised to free him in exchange for Negan. Dude. So Maggie fabricated the whole story to lure Negan into this mess? Damn. In the present, Maggie finally crawls out of the sewers, and around the same time, Ginny fires a flare to signal Negan, and naturally both Negan and Maggie see it.
The final episode of Season 1 picks up right where the previous one left off. Both Negan and Maggie see the flare and rush to the location, and of course Negan is absolutely shocked to see Ginny. Maggie also arrives and tells Negan that Ginny showed up here because she wanted to be with him. That's cute and all, but the group has bigger things to worry about. That's because a heck of a lot of walkers are closing in on them. Seeing all of this, Negan realizes he can't let Ginny stay here, and that's when Pearlie steps in. The Marshal agrees to take Ginny to safety, to which Negan agrees. However, Ginny holds on to Negan, and in a genuinely shocking moment, she speaks for the first time since her dad died.
I want you.
All these months, and now you want to chat?
Dude, she was about to say something important. Of course, deep inside, Negan is happy, but he can't let that show because he really wants Ginny to leave. So instead, Negan gets pissed off at Ginny for clinging to him, and reveals that he was the one who killed Ginny's dad. Dude, what the hell are you talking about? Apparently, Ginny's dad was one of the 5 men Negan killed for assaulting his wife. Negan tells Ginny that he let her tag along because he felt guilty, and she was never his family. That's rough, buddy. Ginny is completely heartbroken, so she leaves with Pearlie. After a while, we see that Ginny is about to leave Manhattan with Pearlie by crossing a river. The next morning, Maggie and Negan go to a lookout spot to keep an eye on the Croat. That's when they see the old jerk heading to the same smoke cloud they've been seeing from the very beginning. Yeah, there's something fishy about that smoke. Naturally, Maggie and Negan decide to follow the Croat. But midway through, Negan realizes that this has been too damn easy. He even asks Maggie if she knows what Ginny was trying to tell them. At this point, Negan realizes that Maggie has set him up, and Maggie pulls a knife on him as well. This is just hard to watch. Naturally, a brutal fight breaks out between the two as they're surrounded by walkers. While Maggie stabs Negan in the shoulder, Negan eventually disarms her and puts the knife to her throat. Obviously, Negan doesn't kill Maggie or anything like that, but he's just heartbroken. Negan understands the Croat wants him in exchange for Herschel, but still, Negan says that he could have helped Maggie get Herschel back. Eventually, Negan says that Maggie is never going to forgive him for killing Glenn, no matter what. This is genuinely devastating. I'm not gonna lie. The next moment, the Croat shows up with his goons, and Maggie holds a knife to Negan's throat to seal the deal. Meanwhile, Pearlie drops Ginny back at the Bricks, and he notices the kid is really pissed at Negan. Back to Negan, Maggie is still holding him hostage as they travel to Herschel's location. On their way, the Croat reveals that he chased down Maggie, who, by the way, is nicknamed the Widow. Realizing that she must want revenge on Negan. Not only that, but the Croat also implies that he knows about the child. Wait, is he talking about Ginny? How in the hell does he know about her? During all this, Maggie is clearly shaken by what she's doing to poor Negan. Finally, the Croat brings the group to the location where he has locked up Herschel. There, Negan asks Maggie to look after Ginny, and eventually the Croat lets Herschel go free. However, Herschel doesn't like seeing his mom holding Negan at knife point. In fact, he's not exactly thrilled after reuniting with Maggie. Oh man, don't worry, she'll make things right. Hopefully. Meanwhile, Pearlie drives home to New Babylon, where he meets with Governor Charlie Bird. Shockingly, Pearlie lies to Charlie and says that he has killed Negan. However, Charlie is kinda pissed that she didn't get to display Negan's death to her community. She then asks Pearlie everything about the methane fuel setup. Yeah, that's what she cares about the most. Elsewhere, Maggie is driving away from the Croats' base along with Herschel, who's pissed at his mom for never letting go of her anger towards Negan. Even Maggie realizes that her anger has destroyed her relationship with Herschel. Now, we cut to Negan, who's back in the ambulance with the Croat. Surprisingly, it doesn't seem like the Croat wants to kill Negan. Instead, he feels guilty for disobeying Negan and killing the child prisoner back then. However, the Croat promises to never repeat that mistake. Wait, so all the Croat wanted was to get Negan back? Around this time, Maggie returns to Bricks with Herschel, and the first thing she does is quietly leave Ginny's dinosaur toy on her bed while she sleeps. Then she goes to Herschel and has a heart-to-heart conversation with the kid. Maggie tells Herschel that she wants to end this thing with Negan once and for all so she can move on. Oh, that's a good idea. Meanwhile, the Croat takes Negan to the theater to meet up with the real boss, the Doma. The Croat tells Negan that their war with Amaya was just a warm-up. In reality, they are preparing for a bigger war. Right now, the Croat is too darn excited to introduce Negan to the Doma. It's basically like his mom and dad have finally reunited. Dude's sick in the head for real. However, the Doma orders the Croat to buzz off since she wants to talk to Negan alone. After that, the Doma tells Negan that the Marshals will eventually come for the island's resources, and to fight back, she wants to unite every settlement under, wait for it, Negan's rule. At this point, Negan is basically the star everyone wants in their movie. Negan isn't really sure why the Doma wants him, but he still listens to the crazy woman. That's when the Doma reveals a severed pinky toe, which actually belongs to Herschel. Oh my goodness. That's just evil! She somehow cut off poor Herschel's pinky toe while he was in the Croat's custody. Of course, she let Herschel leave, but kept his toe as insurance, implying that she could go back for more. The Doma also reveals that she talked to Herschel about Negan and deduced that Negan might feel guilty for killing Glenn. Meanwhile, Maggie is going through Herschel's drawings that he made during the Croat's captivity. In the drawings, Maggie sees Manhattan and the Doma herself. Now, after Negan realizes what this crazy woman can do to Herschel, he sort of agrees to help her. At the same time, Maggie also realizes that the Doma was behind everything. The first episode of Season 2 opens with a Barazzi truck collecting a walker before arriving at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Turns out the cathedral is the Croats' big methane harvesting base, and it seems like the operation is a success. That's because at the next moment, a big part of Manhattan gets power for the first time since the outbreak began. The Croat really turned a cathedral into a power plant. Well, that's deeply unholy. Next, we cut to Maggie, who's now training not only Herschel, but also Ginny. Oh, also, it seems like Ginny has started to speak again, so that's good. Sadly, though, there's still some tension between Maggie and Herschel. Later, we see Herschel giving away his old desk to a kid named Casey. Right then, Herschel takes off his shoes, and Maggie spots the boy's missing toe. Naturally, Maggie wants to ask Herschel what the hell has happened to his foot, but he brushes it off like it's nothing. Elsewhere, Negan is rotting in a cell. That's right, it turns out he hasn't agreed to help the Doma yet. A guy named Victor is guarding Negan's cell, and that's when the Croat shows up. The old geezer tells Negan that things are about to escalate, and the Doma wants Negan's support. It's clear that the Doma might send the Croat after Herschel if Negan doesn't agree to help. However, Negan mentions that going after Herschel won't be a walk in the park, as Maggie will tear him a new one. That sounds about right. The next day, a New Babylon Federation convoy rolls up at Maggie's settlement, and they're dragging a man behind a truck. Oh damn, what did he do? Right then, Governor Charlie introduces herself and publicly credits Pearlie for killing Negan. Still running with that lie? Alright. Now, our man Pearlie tells the crowd that they want to reclaim Manhattan to rebuild civilization. That is why they need soldiers from every settlement. But of course, the crowd ain't buying this crap one bit. That's when the Babylon soldiers drag out their prisoner, Jason Ornell. Apparently, Jason has been accused by Major Lucia Narvaez of dodging the mandatory enrollment in the armed forces. Shockingly, according to New Babylon's sickening law, Jason must be executed publicly. So, they hang the man right in front of everyone. Oh, geez, that escalated in about 10 seconds? Obviously, Maggie is pissed, and even Pearlie is shaken by the execution. Back at the theater, the Croat and the Doma tell Negan that New Babylon is planning a full-scale invasion. The Doma also reveals that basically 3 different factions control the Central Park area. And a man named Bruegel, leader of the gang called Silk Stockings, runs the famous monthly trade meetups and has gotten incredibly rich off of it. Now, the Doma wants Negan to use his old showmanship to unite these 3 factions so that they can stand against New Babylon. The Doma does her best to convince Negan, but the guy just doesn't know how to say yes. Right then, the Doma drops the bomb that her search network has picked up something on Negan's wife, Annie, and their son, Joshua. Yeah, you really shouldn't bring his family into this. The Doma reveals that Annie and Joshua somehow ended up in Memphis instead of Missouri. And now the mother-son duo are on their way to Manhattan. Back at the Bricks, residents Tim, Victoria, and Gretchen wonder if they should volunteer for the Manhattan mission. Benjamin Pierce, the historian of the New Babylon, also tries recruiting people for the mission. Dude even sweet-talks Herschel about Manhattan, which somewhat pisses off Maggie. After that, Pearlie, who, by the way, is a colonel now, speaks to Maggie. As expected, Maggie confronts Pearlie for lying about Negan's death, and Pearlie replies that he lied to protect Negan. And, that's actually true. Then Maggie reveals that she knows the exact reason why New Babylon wants Manhattan. Apparently, New Babylon is powered by ethanol, which comes from corn. However, the ethanol supply is failing because the darn moths are destroying the corn crops. Now, the New Babylon goons want the Barazzi's methane operation. Well, Pearlie somewhat confirms that this is true, but he still wants Maggie to join the fight. Well, Maggie agrees, but only if no unwilling resident from Bricks is forced to get drafted. Says Pearlie really wants Maggie because she's such a badass, the colonel agrees. Meanwhile, back in Manhattan, the Croat shows Negan an upgraded version of the Lucille bat. Negan isn't exactly thrilled, but he has no choice anyway since his family's involved now. Damn! Never imagined I'd see a comeback of Lucille the Bat. Later we see Negan in his old avatar with a leather jacket on, and the Croat arriving at the Three Factions meetup. There, they see a gladiator-type match between two walkers. Really? Are the walkers a form of entertainment now? Bruegel is already there enjoying the match, and we also meet Christos, the leader of one of the three factions, the Bloodshirts. Now we cut to a New Babylon diner where Benjamin says that Manhattan's underground power grid might have survived the outbreak. Yeah, I don't think so. Lucia and General Houseman, a leading New Babylon officer, are also there, so Pearlie brings up Maggie's proposal. Charlie isn't sure if Maggie is worth the trouble, but she agrees to let Maggie undergo a test. Back at the Bricks, Maggie tells Herschel that she has to join the New Babylon guys for this mission, which really pisses off Herschel. Anywho, now is the time for Maggie's test where she has to face like 20 frickin' walkers. You gotta be kidding me! Lucia then calls for anyone else who wants to enlist willingly, and guess what? Ginny walks forward to take the test along with Maggie. Oh no, Ginny, what are you doing? Since Ginny walks forward willingly, Maggie can't really stop her, so without wasting any time, Maggie and Ginny start fighting the walkers. At one moment, Maggie gets cornered while Ginny's about to become walker food, but Maggie breaks out right on time to save the kid. Eventually, only one walker remains on the field, so Lucia kills the darn thing herself. Turns out that Lucia is really impressed with Maggie and Ginny, as she should be. So yeah, Maggie and Ginny get to enlist after all. Back at the gang meeting, Negan makes his grand entrance before the three factions. Negan reveals that New Babylon is hunting the island, so they must reunite to save their asses. Christos doesn't like this one bit, and even questions Negan directly. Not a good idea, my friend. The Croat then gives Negan the new Lucille bat, and as expected, Negan points it at Christos. Naturally, Christos is pissed, so he grabs the Lucille bat himself, but then Negan triggers some kind of shock feature built into the new bat, knocking Christos out cold. Wait, they really gave Lucille a taser function? Okay. At the same time, the Barazzi goons use the flamethrowers to keep the crowd in line. Thanks to Negan's incredible showmanship, the other gang members leave after saying that they'll think about this alliance. Back at the Bricks, Maggie is furious that Ginny, as the kid, wants to go to Manhattan too. It's clear Ginny is doing this because of Negan. Maybe she's hoping to meet him again, so she doesn't listen to Maggie for one bit. To make things worse, Herschel also tells Maggie that he wants to come along. The boy thinks Maggie has enlisted again because of Negan, but Maggie isn't having any of it right now. Instead, she questions Herschel about what really happened in Manhattan. However, Herschel doesn't reveal anything about the Doma or the missing toe, and after hearing that Maggie is going, so he doesn't have to, he agrees to let her leave. Good idea, kid. Let Mama Bear handle this. Eventually, the New Babylon convoy, along with Maggie and Ginny, leaves for Manhattan. At the same time, we see the Doma playing with her pet rat, and she seems very close to it. Finally, after everything, we cut to the top of Central Park, where we hear a monstrous roar. My goodness, what is that? That's clearly something new and terrifying. The second episode kicks off with the New Babylon gang preparing a boat to reach Manhattan. So yeah, fasten your seatbelts because things are about to get crazy. Meanwhile, Negan is back in his cell chilling with his guard Victor. Turns out Victor started to play the Bach instrument to get him through his dad being, in his words, a tyrannical asshole. Back to the New Babylon gang, Maggie tells Pearlie that the Croat will see the boat coming from miles away. Yeah, guys, what the hell were you thinking? Not only that, but Pearlie already told the Croat about New Babylon when he was a prisoner. It means the Croat will already be expecting them, which takes away the element of surprise. So he decides to convince the governor to change plans at the last minute with Maggie's help. Back at the theater, the Croat and Negan get word that the New Babylon ship is being prepped. Then, the Doma reveals that only one gang, led by a guy called Dre, has actually signed up to fight the enemy. Bruegel and Christos' gang are still sitting ducks, so Negan decides to put up a full-blown spectacle to scare the remaining two gangs into joining. Who doesn't love a bloodbath spectacle, right? Back at camp, Maggie and Ginny spot black smoke nearby. Maggie goes to investigate alone and sees a burning pile of tires with a strange blue cloth wrapped around the tires. Before Maggie can make sense of the smoke, Herschel shows up out of nowhere. Apparently the kid arrived here riding a frickin' horse. Dude, Herschel followed her all the way here? Maggie's understandably shocked, but Herschel explains he can't just sit around after everything Maggie went through. Around the same time, Maggie realizes that the fire is the Croat's signal system. Yeah, it means the Croat already knows the invasion's coming. Right then, a group of New Babylon soldiers captures Maggie and Herschel before they can regroup with Ginny. At the camp, Lucia accuses Maggie of desertion, but Pearlie steps in and confirms that she was only investigating the smoke. At this point, Maggie explains that the smoke means the Croat already knows that they're here, and he's using the smoke to signal his gang. However, Lucia just doesn't want to give up on this mission, so they decide on attacking anyway. That's a stupid-ass plan. Maggie knows this is a suicide mission, so she wants to get the hell away from here along with Herschel. However, Lucia threatens to hang Maggie, Herschel, and the rest of the people Maggie stood up for. Well, this pisses off Maggie the right amount to punch Lucia in the frickin' face. Well, Lucia deserves worse. Now, Lucia gets both Maggie and Herschel locked up, but Ginny watches everything from behind a tent. Only Pearlie notices the kid and gives her a silent nod. Okay, I see what's going on here. During all this, the Barazi goons have been assembling makeshift cannons on a rooftop. At the same time, Negan has set up a telescope so they can spot enemies from far away. In short, New Babylon guys are about to be cooked. Later that night, New Babylon soldiers are aboard the boat on their way to Manhattan. Maggie and Herschel are locked up on a boat as well. So Pearlie visits them and apologizes. Maggie asks Pearlie to turn the boat around so that they won't get killed by the Croat, but Pearlie can't really do crap right now, so he just leaves. After a while, New Babylon's boat gets near the island while Negan and the Croat are watching through the telescope. Right then, the Croat mentions that sodium and water react explosively. Dude, did he just foreshadow exactly what's coming? The next moment, the boat passes by a bunch of floating markers on the water, but they're not your usual floating markers. Instead, they're frickin' methane bombs. And one of them even detonates on impact. Holy moly, it's a minefield on water! Realizing they're done for, Charlie orders Lucia to cut the engine and secure everyone below deck. During the panic, Ginny secretly slips away from the other soldiers and frees Maggie and Herschel. That's what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, the Barazi fires 3 more bombs at the ferry using the rooftop cannons. Unfortunately, Charlie takes a direct hit and is blown into damn pieces. Damn, that was quick. Back on the rooftop, we see exactly how the Croat is building these cannon bombs. Turns out the Barazi are using live walkers, sealing their mouths, eyes, ears, and noses shut to trap the gas inside. Then, these sickos are firing them out of cannons as literal walker bombs. They really turned walkers into grenades. That's unique. On the ferry, poor historian Benjamin falls into the water to save himself from the blast. At the same time, Herschel, Ginny, and Maggie are getting on a raft to leave with a bunch of other survivors. Well, Negan spots Herschel through the telescope, so he holds off the next cannon shot until the raft is away from the ferry. And once that raft is clear, Negan orders the next shot, which ultimately destroys the ferry and kills everyone on board. However, both the Croat and Victor notice that Negan hesitated for a bit, but they say nothing. Yeah, keep your holes shut, guys. Later we see Maggie, Pearlie, Lucia, the kids, and 10 others reaching the shore. Yeah, they're the only survivors after Negan's grenade spectacle. Anywho, after stepping into the city, Lucia realizes that her gun is missing. So now Maggie takes charge to lead the group to safety. The next day at the church, the Doma is popping champagne to celebrate the win. Negan and the Croat are also there. That's when Barazi brings in a captured Benjamin, who apparently washed ashore. Instantly, Benjamin says he's just a historian and not some mindless New Babylon soldier. Surprisingly, the Doma is really interested in looking at Benjamin's history notes. At the same time, Benjamin oddly asks the Doma if they've met before. Of course, the Doma doesn't even remember seeing Benjamin before, but still she agrees to keep the guy alive. Next, the Doma confronts Negan directly and asks exactly who he was trying to spare when he hesitated. Uh-oh. Obviously, Negan doesn't say anything, so the Doma summons poor Victor. Somehow, the Doma knows that Negan has a soft spot for Victor, which is true because Negan is scared as hell right now. While the crazy old lady asks Victor to play Bach, Negan reveals that he was just trying to spare some random kid on the boat. Of course, the Doma doesn't believe Negan, so she slits poor Victor's throat right on the spot.
No! No!
Holy hell! Why do they always have to kill the sweet artistic guys? Negan is pissed, as he should be, and the Doma compliments the Croat for doing well. So yeah, it's possible that the Croat informed the Doma about Negan's hesitation. However, Victor might have kept this a secret to protect Negan, and that is why she killed the poor guy. Back with the survivors, Maggie sees Herschel bandage an injured woman's leg with the same blue cloth from the signal fire. Holy crap! Maggie instantly realizes that her own son was the one who tipped off the Croat. Dude, Herschel is the Croat's little spy, but why? Still, Maggie doesn't confront the boy about the betrayal. Herschel, on the other hand, starts to cry and says he doesn't know what's happening to him. Meanwhile, we see Ginny quietly check her bag. Turns out she was the one who stole Lucia's gun this whole time. Sneaky. Very sneaky, Ginny. Anywho, as the Barazi closes in, the survivors flee into Central Park. Damn, it's the same place from where we heard that scary-ass roar! The third episode kicks off with a flashback. We see Herschel in the Croat's captivity, and the poor kid is taped to a chair. That's when the Dama visits Herschel and apologizes for how he's being treated. She even offers the boy some sort of candy. Basically, she acts like a good guy so that Herschel trusts her lying ass. And once she leaves, Herschel eats the darn candy. Why do I have a feeling this candy is symbolic? Back in the present, the survivors are still walking through Central Park. After a while, a creepy walker attacks them, and while Herschel puts the ugly thing down, the kid notices that the walker's heart is missing. Wait, someone's out here just performing zombie surgery? Well, that's new. Right about now, we see a girl named Joan watching the survivors from a distance. Meanwhile, Negan, the Croat, and a bunch of Barazi goons show up outside of the park. A guy named Waylon reports that New Babylon forces are inside the park, so the Croat orders a full-blown search. Back with the survivors, Maggie is only focused on keeping everyone alive. However, sicko Lucia is still hell-bent on securing the methane, so she wants to split the enemy forces to make this work. Obviously, Maggie tells Lucia that she's out of her frickin' mind, but Lucia doesn't care and wants to move ahead with her plan with Pearlie's support. These guys clearly have a death wish. Once Lucia's gone, Pearlie confesses to Maggie that she has been right about everything. Sure, Pearlie still wants to go after methane, but from now on, he wants to do things Maggie's way. Now, the group keeps moving and enters a field where they get attacked by a bunch of walkers. A lot of people die, and in the chaos, everyone separates from each other. Also, Ginny loses her bag while fighting off the walkers, and later Herschel finds it. At the same time, a walker attacks the poor kid, but fortunately, Joan saves Herschel before vanishing. Okay, so Joan is friendly, I assume. Moving on, Herschel is scared as hell and alone, so he calls out to his mom and Ginny. Outside the park, the Croat tells Negan that after escaping from Negan years ago, the old geezer arrived in Manhattan. He would have become walker food, but the Dama found and saved him. And that's why the Croat trusts the crazy and bloodthirsty woman. After listening to this crap, Negan decides to find the survivors himself. However, the Croat sends Waylon along with him. Oh, and yes, Waylon's carrying a spear like he's back in the Stone Age. Back with the survivors, everyone makes it out of the field and into a restaurant to escape the walkers. There's one problem, though. Herschel isn't with the survivors, so he's still out there. However, Maggie can't search for her boy until it's safe to go back out. Right then, Maggie's gang finds another group of survivors called the Foragers. This group is led by a woman named Roxana, who's pissed at Maggie's group for making too much noise. Roxana tells everyone that the Barazi already know they're in the park and have it surrounded. However, Roxana agrees to let them stay, provided they never return once this entire thing is over. You know, that sounds like a plan. Naturally, Maggie still wants to go out to find Herschel, but Roxana reveals that her people are already searching for the boy. Roxana also says walkers aren't really their enemies in Central Park. The real threat is something else. My goodness, I'm already scared. During all this mess, Pearlie wants Roxana's group to come under New Babylon's umbrella. But of course, Roxana tells Pearlie to shove his recruitment pitch. Maggie is seriously pissed off right now, so she heads out on her own to look for Herschel. Meanwhile, Herschel finds a safe spot from where he can see the city. So he sits down, pulls out Ginny's stolen gun for safety, and starts drawing to figure out where he is. Now we cut to another flashback of Herschel in the Croat's captivity. The Dama visits the boy while he's drawing Manhattan. The old woman starts talking to the boy and reveals that a while back she also lost something. In that sense, she is similar to Maggie, who has also lost Glenn because Negan bashed his head in. Herschel says he doesn't care about that. It's Maggie who's obsessed with Negan. However, the Dama says that because of her anger, Maggie can't see the real Herschel. Basically, she's trying to get closer to Herschel while pushing him away from Maggie. She is so good at manipulation that it's actually genuinely disturbing. Before leaving, the Dama very conveniently fails to lock the door behind her. Back in the present, Negan and Waylon are searching for Maggie's group, or anyone from New Babylon. After a while, the duo enters a tunnel where they get ambushed by some walkers. Obviously, Negan manages to break free because he's one of the main characters, but he leaves Waylon to die. Negan didn't even have to get his hands dirty to take this guy out. Back at the restaurant, Lucia tells Pearlie that he was right to think of recruiting the foragers. However, they have to wait for the right moment to make that happen. Meanwhile, Joan finds Herschel, who convinces the mystery girl to help him find his friends. But right then, Waylon, who's seriously injured but somehow still alive, stumbles out and attacks them. Without wasting even a moment, Waylon stabs poor Joan in the leg. Herschel points a gun at the big jerk, but he's too darn scared to fire. Fortunately, Negan appears out of nowhere and spears Waylon from behind, saving both kids. Shockingly, though, Herschel gets spooked by the whole thing and fires at Negan. Oh, geez, boy, think before firing that darn gun, all right? Thankfully, though, Herschel misses the shot and Negan decides to slip away. Back in the field, Maggie hears the mysterious roar in the distance. Before she can process it, Herschel finds her with Joan and two other foragers. Now they all head back to the restaurant while Negan gets the hell out of this park. Now we're back with another flashback in which we see Herschel trying to escape from his cell. While running away, he gets ambushed by walkers, but the Dama arrives and saves him. Then the manipulative old lady takes Herschel to a room from which the boy can get a sick view of the city. The Dama tells Herschel she's rebuilding the entire city and that the boy can help her with it. Basically, she's offering Herschel a blank canvas so the boy joins her on this mission. What's worse is that the Dama's plan is actually working, as the kid is genuinely intrigued. Man, I really hate the Dama for doing this to Herschel. Back in the present, Herschel returns Ginny's bag while the foragers try to save Joan, who's sadly dying from blood loss. Oh, goodness. After that, Herschel explains to Maggie everything that happened and that he doesn't know where Negan went. The kid also snaps at Maggie for being so obsessed with Negan and storms off. Meanwhile, we see that despite Roxana's efforts, poor Joan dies right on the spot. Ah, man. Even now, Lucia is hellbent on pushing her recruitment agenda, so Pearlie orders Lucia to sit her ass down. Now everyone says their goodbyes to Joan, and once that's done, Roxana cuts out Joan's heart. Oh, so that's why those walkers are missing their hearts. Shockingly, the foragers do this to their own dead on purpose, and that's why they don't consider walkers their enemies. Elsewhere, Negan reunites with the Croat outside the park. Negan lies to the old dude, and he says he didn't find anyone, and that Waylon died because of a situation. Negan also says that the entire park is a death trap, so there's a chance that every New Babylon soldier is already dead. Of course, the Croat is too smart to buy the story, but he entertains Negan's lie. For now. Back inside the park, a forager feeds Joan's heart to the walkers, and then Joan herself walks away after becoming a walker. Meanwhile, Herschel finally reveals to Maggie that he cares about rebuilding Manhattan. Now we see in one final flashback in which the Dama compliments Herschel's drawings. The Dama even tells the kid that he'd need to do some stuff and make some sacrifices to rebuild the city. Dude, the sick old lady has actually influenced Herschel deeply. The fourth episode kicks off with Bruegel, who is too excited to see electricity return to a whole city block, and while embracing the change, this creep tosses the rat to his pet walker. Next, we see the Croat, Negan, and the Dama roll in near Bruegel's base. The Croat's pissed at him for not joining the war against New Babylon, so the Dama wants Negan to handle the talks with Bruegel. That's because the Barazi needs Bruegel's support against New Babylon, so they can't really afford the Croat acting like an angry kid. Also, the Doma mentions that Negan's family is about to reach the island, so she'll offer him safe passage if, of course, Negan plays nice. At this point, the Doma is also carrying Benjamin everywhere like he's some kind of living and breathing toy. Apparently, the Doma wants Benjamin to document everything, as if she were to become a messiah for the future generations. Moving on, the group finally heads to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is Bruegel's base. Elsewhere, Maggie's group is still at Roxana's place. There, Maggie tells Pearlie everything, including the fact that she traded Negan for Herschel. Pearlie understands where Maggie is coming from. At the same time, Herschel also tells Pearlie that he saw Negan in Central Park, so Maggie and Pearlie realize that Negan must know about the methane's base of operations. There's one teeny tiny problem, though. Lucia and the rest of the New Babylon soldiers think that Negan is dead. However, Pearlie isn't concerned about it and says he'll handle it. At the same time, Herschel also reveals that Ginny was the one who stole Lucia's gun. There's a chance that Ginny wants to use the gun on someone. Yeah, we already know she wants to off Negan with the gun, and that's just sad. At the museum, the Doma offers Bruegel a little bit of methane as a good gesture. Also, we learn that Bruegel took control of the Silk Stockings gang after Christus lost to him in one of those Walker Gladiator matches. Anywho, Bruegel offers the Doma a tour of his place, and the old lady agrees. Back to Maggie's group, Pearlie, Herschel, and Maggie decide to go to the museum, possibly to gain some info. At the same time, Lucia is keeping an eye on Ginny as the little girl is secretly hiding her bag. Meanwhile, out of the park, Pearlie and Maggie talk a bit about the old world. However, Herschel can't really relate to anything since he was born after the outbreak, so the kid wanders off to pick blackberries. Back at the museum, Bruegel arranges yet another Walker Gladiator match, because why not? The Doma seems to enjoy it, but the Croat is frustrated. The old guy even thinks that Bruegel's Walker Gladiator has some kind of trick because he always wins. In the middle of all that, Benjamin finally realizes how he knows the Doma. Benjamin reveals that the Doma was a powerful career-making theater critic in the old world. The lady was so influential that she basically ran the city. Then Benjamin recalls an incident in which a playwright wrote a play to mock the Doma. This crazy old lady was so pissed she actually bit the writer at the performance. Yikes, that's horrible. However, that crazy-ass stunt completely destroyed the Doma's reputation in the city. The Doma listens to all this and changes the subject. The old lady reveals she knows Herschel sent the smoke signal to alert the Barazi. Meanwhile, during the fight, the Croat suddenly notices something strange. Oh, what is it? Tell us, old man! Back at Roxana's place, Lucia eventually finds her stolen gun in Ginny's bag. Instantly, Ginny reveals that she wanted to use it to kill Negan. And guess what? Instead of being furious at Ginny, Lucia lets her keep the gun. That's an alliance I didn't see coming. Also, this means that Lucia now knows that Negan is alive, which means Pearlie is a big fat liar. Back at the fight, Bruegel agrees to join the Barazi alliance, but only if they let him build a second methane facility inside the museum. At this point, the Croat decides that he's had enough of this crap. Then the Croat reveals Bruegel has been drugging his champion with stimulants, and that's why his fighter always wins. Oh, so Bruegel is basically giving his fighter steroids. Obviously, Bruegel doesn't accept any of this and threatens to end the negotiation. But Negan steps in with a compromise. Apparently, Negan proposes a Walker Gladiator fight. If Bruegel's champion wins, he gets the methane deal. However, if his fighter loses, the Silk Stockings will have to join the alliance with no strings attached. Bruegel thinks this is a great offer, so he accepts. Around this time, Maggie's gang has been keeping an eye on the museum from a rooftop. Right then, Pearlie spots Negan releasing a walker named Dan and grabbing a can of oil before heading back inside. Maggie, Pearlie, and Herschel decide to sneak in, and Herschel offers to create a distraction while Maggie comes up with a plan. Moving on, the gladiator fight is about to begin, and Negan is confident that his walker, Dan, will win. Of course he will. But as they're preparing for a fight, a fire breaks out in Bruegel's favorite painting room. When everyone's distracted, Negan hears the Savior's whistle and slips away after saying he needs to take a leak. Negan follows the whistle and finds Maggie, who clarifies that she's not here for him. Instead, she's working for New Babylon, so they are off her and Herschel's backs. Maggie says that she wants the methane lab's location, but Negan isn't sure about it because he's protecting Annie and Joshua. Despite that, he tells Maggie that the methane lab is in St. Patrick's Cathedral. After that, Negan reveals to Maggie that the Doma has somehow gotten into Herschel's mind. In fact, Maggie's son is the reason the Barazi knew about New Babylon's arrival. Obviously, Maggie already knows this, but she still denies it in front of Negan. Eventually, Maggie leaves the place before anyone can spot her. Meanwhile, Herschel heads back to the group's entry point, where he runs into, wait for it, the Doma.
Well, isn't this a nice surprise?
Ah, damn it. Now we are back to the gladiator fight, and the Doma is here, so we don't know what she said to Herschel. During the fight, Negan sees Maggie sneaking away while not being spotted by the Croat. So to create a distraction for Maggie, Negan himself jumps inside the ring. You know, that's brave. In that moment, Maggie locks eyes with the Doma and recognizes her from Herschel's drawing. The Doma, on the other hand, says nothing and lets Maggie escape. Is she really letting Maggie go? Yeah, I don't like this. Meanwhile, Negan is still inside the ring and realizes that Bruegel's fighter is actually a man behind the mask. Oh, so that's how this jerk is always winning. Right then, Negan pushes Bruegel's fighter towards Dan, and the fake walker manages to kill Negan's fighter. Obviously, the Croat and the Doma are pissed at Bruegel has won. However, Negan whispers something to Bruegel in private, possibly threatening to expose his dirty cheating trick, so naturally Bruegel decides to join the alliance. Unconditionally. That's how Negan rolls, buddy. Later, we see Maggie reunite with Herschel and Pearlie, and she tells them the location of the methane lab. Herschel, on the other hand, doesn't tell Maggie anything about running into Doma. Seriously, kid? Hiding something from your mother is not a good idea. Around the same time, the Barrazi throws Benjamin into the car trunk. It seems like the Doma is pissed at him for spilling the beans about her past. Finally, we see Bruegel killing the man who was pretending to be his walker fighter. Turns out this man was Bruegel's loyal bodyguard, but Bruegel doesn't care about him now that his secret has been exposed. That's just cold. Of course, Bruegel has lost this fight to Negan, but he's clearly planning something else. Something that is connected to Central Park. Dude's one stubborn bastard. The 5th episode kicks off with the Croat trying on a fancy new outfit at a place called Salvatore. That's clearly a priority to him right now. Meanwhile, outside a Barrazi guard gets killed by some infiltrators who are carrying freaking hatchets. Suddenly, these mysterious guys also cut off the power to the entire block, including the Salvatore store. Back in Central Park, Maggie and Pearlie consider sneaking into St. Patrick's Cathedral through hidden passages. Apparently, every old church has at least one secret passage. Cut to the theater, the Doma is pissed at the Croat for the power outage, since it makes them look weak. She also mentions that Christos' gang has yet to be recruited against New Babylon. Of course, Negan will bring Christos on board, somehow, but only if the Doma promises to reunite him with his family once the job's done.
Pinky swear. Pinky toe swear.
This woman is really into pinky toes. After that, the Doma asks Negan to handle Christos alone while the Croat figures out what's causing the power outage. On top of everything, the Doma even makes fun of the Croat's new suit. She really treats the Croat like trash. Later, Maggie, Pearlie, and Herschel return to Roxana's place, but as soon as they reach there, Lucia takes them into custody. This sick woman has even detained Roxana as leverage. Immediately, Lucia gets Pearlie locked up since he lied about Negan. Even Pearlie admits that he lied, but now Negan is their best bet to get methane. At the same time, Maggie realizes that Ginny must have told Lucia about Negan, and she's pissed. Yeah, Ginny is screwed up big time. Moving on, Lucia now lays out the plan. Apparently, this idiot wants Maggie to fake surrender and lure Negan and the Croat to Roxana's place through the field. Yeah, the same field that is infested with the dead. Lucia even promises Ginny that she will let her kill Negan once everything's done. Maggie absolutely hates all of it, but sadly she can't do anything. Yet. So she leaves for this fake surrender thing while Herschel stays behind as Lucia's hostage. Elsewhere, the Croat finds the slashed wires while investigating the outage. Right then, the old geezer also finds a clue that makes him smile. But yeah, we don't see what exactly he finds. Later, Negan finally arrives at the Bloodshirt space, which means he's at Christos' turf. But as soon as he gets there, some of Christos' men capture him. Now Negan comes face to face with Christos, who just flatly refuses to join the alliance against New Babylon. Dude's not easy to break, I guess. Negan is clearly frustrated, but then he sees two little girls calling Christos their father in Dutch. Aww, Christos is a father. Negan even spots women, other children, and even a baby in the back room. Instantly, Negan realizes that Christos isn't some power-hungry warlord. He's just a man desperately protecting his family. Negan even apologizes to the man and says that he can relate to him. Later that night, Maggie takes out a New Babylon guard and tries to free Pearlie and Roxana. Pearlie realizes that this is not a good idea because Lucia will now hunt Maggie like crazy. Oh, for heaven's sake, this even puts Herschel in danger. However, Maggie says that she'll make sure Lucia doesn't catch her, and then she locks up Pearlie and Roxana again before heading off alone. Back with Christos. The dude explains that Bruegel's gambling robbed them of everything, so now they can't really afford to go to war. However, Negan thinks that Christos can't really sit this one out since the Croat, or New Babylon, will come for him eventually. At least Christos will get a voice for his people if he fights. That sounds about right. Just when things are going Negan's way, the Croat bursts in and accuses Christos of causing the outage. Apparently the Croat found a bone knife, which Christos' gang uses on the site. Right then, Negan suddenly gets dizzy. Oh no! Turns out the Croat had been pumping methane inside the meeting room. Of course, Negan tries to protest, but the Croat and Barazi goons eventually finish off Christos' men. Not only that, but the Croat personally kills Christos. Dude, you're sick. Just sick. Outside, the Croat, who's really proud of what he's done, tells Negan that he spared the women and children. Negan is still pissed at the Croat and asks if the Doma ordered all of this, but the Croat doesn't answer. Now we cut to Maggie, who sneaks behind Lucia while she's talking to Herschel. Unfortunately, Lucia spots Maggie, and the two struggle for a bit. But the next moment, Ginny enters and points her gun at Herschel, forcing Maggie to surrender. Dude, Ginny really betrayed Maggie after everything they went through together. Cut back to Negan, the dude slowly and very subtly starts to turn the Croat against the Doma. Instead of being pissed at the old geezer for killing Christos, Negan tells the Croat that he doesn't like how the Doma treats him. I see what you're doing here, Negan. Back at the theater, we learn that the Doma didn't exactly order the Croat to kill Christos, so she's really furious at him right now. However, thanks to Negan's little push, the Croat finally snaps at the Doma and demands some frickin' respect. The Doma is stunned, so she storms out after telling the Croat to cool off. Back at Roxana's place, New Babylon sets up a public execution for Roxana because she still hasn't agreed to join New Babylon. Not only that, but Lucia also wants to hang Maggie because she's been such a pain in her ass. However, what Lucia doesn't realize is that all the commotion has been drawing a massive horde of walkers. Regardless, New Babylon goons move ahead and first hang poor Roxana, killing her on the spot. Man, she's really gone. However, just as they place the noose around Maggie's neck, the walkers storm the place. The herd quickly kills several people, and in the chaos, Herschel tries to go after Maggie. However, Lucia grabs the poor boy, so Maggie's about to get eaten by a walker. Surprisingly though, Ginny swoops in at the last moment and saves Maggie. Oh geez, that was really close. Now, Lucia tries to run while still holding Herschel hostage. Ironically though, a zombified Roxana attacks Lucia and kills the sadistic woman while Maggie grabs Herschel. Oh yeah, Roxana literally got her revenge from beyond the grave. Back at the theater, the Doma is chillin' and listening to the opera. But her happiness doesn't last long, as she soon discovers that her beloved pet rat is dead. What? Shockingly, someone crushed the rat with their foot. Seriously, who could have done that? Later we see Maggie, Pearlie, Herschel, and Ginny thinking about what the hell just happened. I mean, they are stunned because everyone else in the group just is dead. At this point, we see that Ginny has a serious wound on her back and that she's been hiding it from others. So yeah, it means that Ginny was bitten by a walker during the whole mess. Oh, holy crap. Meanwhile, Herschel confesses to Maggie that he met the Doma and the old lady was kind to him. Herschel even admits sending the smoke signal to the Croat. However, Herschel did all of that because he wanted Manhattan to be rebuilt. But now seeing how many people are dead, he feels guilty. Maggie is relieved that her son has finally told the truth and now she's ready to go back home. Right then, Bruegel and his gang casually arrive at the location and kill the rest of the walkers. Even Maggie and Pearlie are shocked to see this guy. Yeah, dude, what are you doing here? Meanwhile, at the theater, the Croat goes to make peace with the Doma, but the old lady snaps at him, thinking he's the one who killed the rat. The Doma is so pissed that she even bites the Croat. She really is a biter. In that struggle, the Doma knocks over some candles, igniting the rug. To make things worse, a clothing rack falls over her. Since the Doma lacks upper body strength, she can't really move away from the fire, so she calls out to the Croat for help and even screams out his real name. Mile. Finally, we know his real name. Anywho, instead of helping the Doma, the Croat lets her burn. I'd say good riddance. Finally, we see Negan back in his cell, and we learn that he was the one who crushed the Doma's rat. Negan did all that to turn the Croat and the Doma against each other. Absolutely masterful, Negan. The 6th episode kicks off with Bruegel taking the New Babylon survivors to one of his strongholds. Since everyone is inside, one of Bruegel's guards gets attacked by
something unseen that clearly isn't your typical walker. Meanwhile, the Croat tries explaining the Dama's death to Negan, who just isn't interested in details. Instead, Negan asks the Croat what he plans to do now. Then the Croat reveals that Negan's family is arriving tomorrow, and that Negan can choose to stay on the island or leave with them. Yeah, he's definitely leaving. Back at Bruegel's hideout, Maggie and the rest of the gang finally talk to the guy. First things first, Bruegel reveals that the survivors can choose to leave whenever they want. Then Bruegel says he's fascinated with the new Babylon, and he would love to be colonized by him. That is the first and last time I'll hear somebody ever say that about colonization. In return, Bruegel offers to reveal Methane Lab's location and even take care of Negan and the Croat. However, Maggie isn't really sure that Bruegel can really stab the Croat in the back. As they're talking, one of Bruegel's men bursts in carrying the attacked guard from earlier. Sadly, though, the guard is in really bad shape and dies before anyone can find out what got her. Dude, the tension is killing me. Back at the theater, the Croat is feeling bad for letting the Dama die because he somewhat cared about the woman. So he's been having a full breakdown. However, Negan tries to comfort the guy by saying that he can just walk away from all this. Yeah, man, there's still time. Meanwhile, we see that Pearlie is actually tempted by Bruegel's offer, but Maggie pushes back hard. Even Pearlie is confused because all this time, Maggie wanted Negan dead, so why does it matter now? However, before Maggie can answer, Ginny storms off without a word. That clearly hit a nerve. Now the rest of the group decides to sleep on this offer. Back at the theater, Negan and the Croat are really having a brotherly moment. But in the middle of the conversation, the Croat notices the rat's flesh on the bottom of Negan's shoe. Ah, damn it. The Croat puts two and two together and realizes that Negan orchestrated everything, so he picks up Lucille and hits Negan hard. However, the Croat orders his men to stand down because this fight is personal. The next moment, Negan grabs Lucille and beats the crap out of the Croat, but he doesn't kill the old geezer and asks him to leave instead. And the Croat does exactly that. Elsewhere, Maggie walks into a bathroom while Ginny is treating her secret wound. Maggie doesn't see the wound, but she offers the kid a place at the bricks once this is all over. Right then, Maggie says to Ginny that, like the kid, she is also obsessed with killing Negan. Basically, Maggie can relate to Ginny, but she can't really help her get over this anger. Cut back to Negan, he sees that Benjamin is locked in a cell, so he frees the poor guy. They briefly talk about history and how Negan used to lead the sanctuary. Those were fun times. That night, Herschel sneaks off to poison the Silk Stockings' water supply with walker blood. Ah, jeez, dude. But of course, Maggie stops him and realizes that Herschel wants to kill Silk Stockings guys because they want to join New Babylon. Basically, Herschel is still doing what the Dama wanted him to do, destroy New Babylon. Oh, and yes, Herschel doesn't know that the so-called kind Dama is dead for good. Anyway, Maggie tells Herschel to snap out of the witch's control, and Herschel decides to storm off. However, as soon as the kid opens the door to leave, a bear is standing right there. A bear? Is that what's been attacking people? Naturally, they slam the door shut just in time and split up while running. The bear, who by the way has a damaged eye, starts chasing Maggie and almost reaches her. But just then, Herschel throws a knife into the bear's remaining eye. Instantly, the bear impales itself on nearby spikes, dying on the spot. My goodness, that was a really close one. Now Maggie starts looking for Herschel, who is nowhere to be found. Uh-oh. Maggie realizes that the boy must have headed out to find the Dama, so she heads out and starts looking for him. Eventually, Maggie ends up at Radio City Music Hall, where she runs into Negan. Negan knows that Herschel might be looking for the Dama, so he tells Maggie the crazy old woman is dead. Negan tells Maggie that Herschel might have gone to the theater if he were looking for the Dama. At the same time, Maggie tells him that Bruegel is planning to ambush them. After all that, Maggie leaves to find Herschel in the theater. Back at Bruegel's place, Pearlie finds the throwing knives and the bear. So he deduces that Maggie and Herschel might have killed the bear. Elsewhere, Negan sees from a distance that his wife and child are here. However, instead of meeting them, Negan orders the Barazzi to safely escort his family back to Tennessee. I mean, it makes sense. Negan doesn't want his wife or son to be in danger. Dude, that's just straight up heartbreaking. Back at the museum, Pearlie finally decides to reject Bruegel's offer. That's the right call, man. Bruegel doesn't like this one bit, and he reveals that they found Lucia before she fully turned into a walker. Before turning, Lucia revealed everything, and I mean everything about her group. So Lucia was a prick right up until the very end. Bruegel says to Pearlie that he'll get methane one way or another. Then the sicko reveals that he had been holding Walker Lucia all this time, but he kills her right in front of Pearlie.
Well, that was totally unnecessary. Finally, we see Negan heading back to his base when he gets confronted by Ginny. Oh, damn. Ginny points her gun at Negan and is all set to shoot, but she suddenly collapses because of her wound. Instantly, Negan carries Ginny inside and looks at her wound, which has gotten really bad. The 7th episode kicks off with Maggie arriving at the theater, where she sees Doma's burnt body. She also sees the Croat, who's bummed out since his gang threw him out. However, Herschel isn't there, so Maggie asks the Croat to help her find the kid. If the Croat refuses to help, Maggie threatens to start cutting off his toes one by one. Yikes, that's a, very specific punishment. Meanwhile, at the church, Negan is worried about Ginny because she's unconscious and really sick. Benjamin also shows up with medical supplies, and that's when Negan spots a very rare burn ointment that's really hard to find. Ooh, that's hopeful. Then Negan learns from his gang that a nurse supposedly hid a stash of medicine, including antibiotics, in Bellevue Hospital before the outbreak. The stash of medicine is on the 3rd floor, and sadly nobody who went looking came back. Like, ever. Cool, I'm sure Negan will go anyway. Back at the theater, the Croat takes Maggie to the Doma's special room, hoping they can find Herschel there. Sadly, Herschel isn't there either, so Maggie's pissed, and during all this mess, the Croat reveals that Herschel gave up his pinky toe willingly to the Doma. That's deeply messed up. Right then, the Croat spots one of Herschel's drawings of the fallen sky bridge. The Croat quickly realizes that Herschel might be in a hidden safe house, as the Doma told the kid to go there in emergencies. Around the same time, Negan prepares to leave for the hospital and asks Benjamin to look after Ginny. That sounds easy enough. At the hospital, Negan hides from several walkers who are just roaming around, but then he gets ambushed by a child walker, which is deeply unsettling, to be honest. During the struggle, Negan falls and hits his head hard. Oh jeez. Meanwhile, Maggie and the Croat climb a heck of a lot of stairs to reach the top of a building, which leads to the safe house. And while fighting with a walker, she gets separated from the Croat. Of course, the Croat finds Maggie, but the poor woman collapses from exhaustion right in front of him. After a while, Negan wakes up bleeding and sees the child walker standing over him. Negan immediately pushes him back and flees, hitting his head again. Not his day, I guess. While running away, Negan sees a mysterious shadow running across the hallway. Regardless, Negan continues to walk towards the operating room. Around the same time, Maggie wakes up all fine and is surprised that the Croat hasn't killed her. The Croat then has an emotional talk with Maggie and reveals that his mother might still be in Croatia, so the poor guy hopes to reunite with her someday. After that, the Croat and Maggie reach a sky bridge, which they have to cross apparently. The glass on the bridge is all messed up, and to make things worse, walkers are chasing them. The Croat crosses the bridge like a Chad, but Maggie has a phobia of heights. That's just great, ain't it? Obviously, it's tough for Maggie to cross, and she almost falls off. However, the Croat extends a ladder just in time to pull Maggie to safety. Oh gosh, I was really scared for her. At the hospital, Negan finds absolutely no darn medicine in the operating room. Later, the poor guy also learns that the shadow he saw earlier was his dead wife, Lucille. Wait, what? It's clear that Negan is seeing things because of his head injury, because next he sees Annie and Joshua. Oh, that's painful. Once the vision stops, Negan finally spots a ventilator, exactly what he needs for Ginny right now. Meanwhile, Maggie and the Croat reach the supposed safe house, which is completely empty. However, the Croat does find his mother's photo here, so there's a chance he brought Maggie to his old apartment or whatever. The Croat lied to Maggie about this being a safe house, hoping she'll kill him right there. That way, he'll be able to say goodbye to his mother. Well, Maggie almost pushes him out of a window, but she pulls him back. Turns out Maggie wants the Croat for help to find Herschel first. Later that night, the Croat tells Maggie that his mother actually left when he was 12. Years later, the Croat found her, but she had already died. As they're talking, Maggie sees a flashlight signal coming from the New York Times building. Apparently, Herschel used the same flashlight signal as a child, so Maggie thinks it must be him. Finally, she at least got some hope. Around this time, Negan is back at the church and hooks Ginny to the ventilator. Negan believes that the life support can buy the kid's body enough time to fight off the infection. Benjamin is also by Ginny's side, and Negan reveals that the base will get attacked soon. However, Benjamin refuses to leave Ginny alone, or flee for that matter. Outside of the New York Times building, the Croat parts ways with Maggie because he doesn't want to ruin her moment with Herschel. Aw man, this dude really has come around. Inside, Maggie finds Herschel, and much to her absolute shock, she also sees the Doma? Holy freaking hell, how is she still alive? The Dama has a burn scar on her neck, but she's very much alive. Finally, with a creepy smile on her face, the Dama knocks Maggie unconscious. The final episode of Season 2 picks up at the New York Times building, where Maggie wakes up tied to a wall. Herschel, on the other hand, is pacing like crazy because he's too darn anxious about what's going to happen. Meanwhile, at the museum, Pearlie checks Ginny's room and realizes that she's not here. You're finally catching up, Pearlie. Elsewhere, Bruegel is watching his goons get ready to fight Negan and the Barrazi. When Pearlie arrives, Bruegel tells him that once all of this is over, everyone should call him Mayor. Not in this show, my man. Pearlie, however, asks Bruegel about Ginny and even threatens Bruegel with a knife. That's when Bruegel admits that Ginny asked him to help kill Negan. Since she was too injured to reach the church herself, his men gave her a ride. As Pearlie is taking it all in, Bruegel slashes Pearlie with a hidden blade inside his watch. Seriously? Who hides a knife inside a watch? At this point, Bruegel reveals that he'll use Ginny as an insurance policy against Negan if the negotiation doesn't work. Later, Benjamin tells Negan that the silk-stocking sickos have finally arrived. Negan tells Benjamin that he can leave if he wants to, but the sweet historian decides to stay anyway. Back to Maggie, she notices a small set of keys inside a filing cabinet, so she drags the cabinet closer to her, ultimately grabbing the keys. Just then, the Dama walks in like a total creep to speak to Maggie. During the conversation, Maggie quietly begins cutting off her restraints with the stolen key. And at the same time, the Dama reveals that she actually escaped the fire after the Croat left the room. Then she planted another body on the scene and burned it so no one could recognize it. Dude, this woman just pisses me off. Around the same time, the Dama realizes that Maggie is trying to break loose, so she orders Maggie to toss over the darn keys. Ah, come on. Later, the silk stockings arrive at the church and hand over their weapons before entering. However, they did bring a big-ass statue as a gift to Negan. Also, it turns out that Pearlie has disguised himself in one of the silk stockings' armors. Anywho, Bruegel and Negan now sit down for business, and Negan says New Babylon is a threat to both of them. As they're talking, Pearlie notices that every single church bench has been soaked in fuel. Yeah, that's definitely not normal. Just before anyone can react, Negan orders his men to close the church doors. Then he unleashes a herd of walkers from a hidden compartment. On top of everything, the Barrazi soldiers use flamethrowers to create short walls of fire that surround silk stockings from every direction. Oh, damn! And in the middle of this absolute chaos, Negan munches on an apple and enjoys the show. Welcome to Negan's world, jerks. Back at the New York Times building, the Dama finally reveals that she's been using Herschel. At first, she wanted Negan to rebuild the new world, but after learning so much about Maggie, she wants her to take the lead. And to kick things off, the Dama wants Maggie to kill Negan. According to the crazy old lady, killing Negan is the only way Maggie and Herschel can finally escape that endless loop of hatred. Meanwhile, at the church, we learn that the statue Silk Stockings brought actually contains weapons. So Pearlie knocks down the darn statue and the Silk Stockings guys arm themselves. Realizing what has happened, Negan also picks up his trusty Lucille bat and gets to fighting. Well, it's about time. At the New York Times building, Herschel apologizes to Maggie for everything that's happened. At this point, Herschel reveals that he knows Maggie can't ever forgive Negan and move on. So it's important for Negan to die so Maggie can finally let go of her past. Maggie listens to all this and finally agrees to finish the job. Oh no, you can't be serious, Maggie. Now Maggie walks out to confront Negan while the Dama is happy that things are finally going her way. Elsewhere, Benjamin is on the church's rooftop along with a guard. From there, Benjamin notices a strange boat has quietly arrived on the shore. But before he can figure out what's happening, a New Babylon soldier arrives at the rooftop and kills the Barrazi with a freaking shotgun. Ah, jeez. However, Benjamin shouts that he's with the New Babylon, so the soldier doesn't shoot him. Back at the church, the battle is nearly over and Bruegel is barely holding on to his precious life. So Negan and his men corner both Bruegel and Pearlie. At that moment, Bruegel reveals that New Babylon forces are already at the Central Park. Bruegel tells Negan that they can join forces to defeat New Babylon, but of course Negan ain't interested. Right about now, Maggie has arrived at the church and she sees Negan using Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo to decide who he should kill first, Bruegel or Pearlie. Apparently that's exactly how Negan killed Glenn, Maggie's husband, years ago. So poor Maggie is shaken.
Eeny, meeny, miny, Mo!
Yeah, if you're a Walking Dead fan, this scene hits like a truck. Moving on, the rhyme finally lands on Pearlie, but Negan decides to kill Bruegel because he makes the rules. Right then, he shoves fuel inside Bruegel's mouth and lights him on fire. Bruegel literally burns from the inside out, and before his body even hits the floor, Negan crushes his skull with Lucille. Ah, damn, that's brutal on another level. Pearlie is horrified, so he tries to run away, as he should. Naturally, Negan starts to chase Pearlie, and at the same time, Maggie starts to kill off Barazi guards from behind. All this commotion makes Negan turn around, giving Pearlie the perfect chance to smash Negan with a metal pipe. However, Negan still manages to overpower Pearlie and almost finishes him off with Lucille. But at that exact moment, Maggie stabs Negan in the lower back. Man, if you kill Negan, I'm gonna be furious. Negan is shocked and in some serious pain, so he retreats. Meanwhile, Maggie picks up Lucille and goes after Negan. Maggie is literally holding the bat that killed Glenn. Now, Negan crawls towards the cell block where Ginny is on a ventilator. Maggie and Pearlie also arrive, and finally Maggie raises her bat to kill Negan. But when they hear a strange voice coming from within the cell, well, the worst has happened. And while everyone was fighting the goons, Ginny has turned into a walker. Oh man, that's heartbreaking. Seeing Ginny like that, Negan completely breaks down. Maggie also realizes that Negan has tried every darn thing to save this girl, so she lowers Lucille and gives Negan a knife instead. The man finally ends Ginny's misery. Just hold on, let me wipe my tears away. After all that, Pearlie pulls the knife from Negan's back and Maggie just leaves, saying she has something to do. Maggie now returns to the New York Times building where Herschel immediately realizes that Maggie didn't kill Negan. Meanwhile, the Doma silently watches everything like a bloody spectator. Herschel is furious at Maggie for not keeping her promise, but Maggie says that killing Negan won't get rid of the problem. Herschel pushes his mom away, but Maggie promises that she'll never abandon him or leave the city no matter how much he hates her. Finally, with tears in his eyes, Herschel silently walks away from Maggie. Later, Maggie, Negan, and Pearlie watch the New Babylon soldiers march toward the church. With all of the gangs destroyed, New Babylon will definitely control the island now. Pearlie confirms that it's the second wave of the New Babylon army that was sent to seize methane reserves. Elsewhere, Benjamin, who seems really unhappy about this, leads New Babylon soldiers directly to the methane supply. Around the same time, Herschel and the Doma also look at New Babylon taking control of the church. One heck of a way to end the season, right? Alrighty guys, I think I've seen enough zombies and more zombies. So now it's time for me to move on to yet another amazing show. Meanwhile, you guys go check out more videos on the channel. Yeah, we do have a lot of those. And make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all those other awesome things you people do, and I will see you next time. Peace.